Hello and welcome to Neography A to Z. On this channel, I take a look at constructed and natural writing systems for both their functionality and their aesthetic appeal. This episode I will be reviewing Tengwar, created by J.R.R. Tolkien, most likely developed in the 1920s or early 1930s. The first appearance of Tengwar is from an illustration by Tolkien himself to show how he envisioned the dragon Smaug from 1936. The side of the jug facing us reads, "Gold of Thror and Thrain, accursed be the thief," and is then signed with the initials for Thror and Thrain. The internal history of Tolkien's fictional world states that the Tengwar were invented by the elf Fëanor in Valinor, and first used to write the elven tongues Quenya and Telerin. Externally, though, Tengwar is a child or descendant script from Surati, to be covered in a later review, and was created by J.R.R. Tolkien for use in his fictional works. The first published Tengwar sample dates to 1937. Rumil of Valinor created the first writing system of Arda in the Valian year 1179. On one occasion, Tolkien refers to this script as the Tengwar of Rumil. However, this writing system is typically referred to as Surati, each letter being referred to as a Surat. Now on to functionality. The various modes of Tengwar and use of phonemic values to dictate design and structure lend it to functioning as well as either an alphabet or abugida for a wide group of languages. It is fairly Eurocentric from a language family perspective, but has been adapted for languages such as Arabic, Vietnamese, and Turkish. So, it clearly has a solid functionality and strong linguistic foundation. Tengwar, having several modes, can be used as an abugida or alphasyllabary. That is, a segmental writing system in which consonant-vowel sequences are written as units. Each unit is based on a consonant letter, and vowel notation is secondary, like a diacritical mark. Or it can be used as an alphabet. That is, a segmental writing system in which letters represent phonemes. Tengwar is written left to right in horizontal lines. However, numbers are typically written right to left. The Quenya chart shows that the shape of each letter corresponds to the distinctive place and manner of articulation of the sound it represents. The columns indicate place of articulation, while each row indicates the manner. The additional signs are letters that fall outside of these specific categories. On screen, you see a sample. Elbereth Gilthiniel is an elvish hymn to Varda in Tolkien's The Lord of the Rings. It is the longest piece of Sindarin in The Lord of the Rings, and when it is first presented in the text, it is not represented with a translation. There are Tengwar modes for Quenya, Sindarin, English, and many others. Tolkien used multiple modes for English, including full writing and vowel marking, alphabetic modes, phonetic full modes, and phonetic vowel marking modes, known from documents published after his death. Tengwar enthusiasts have created modes for a few dozen natural languages, and numerous conlangs have adopted some version of Tengwar, often for private use such as journaling and occasionally covert communication. On screen, you see the first article of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, written in the English mode of Tengwar. The foundational elements of each letter are basic. The telco, or stem, and the luva, or bow, are the two basic elements of each letter. These are combined in various ways to form each of the Tengwa. Restricting the combinations by having a telco only be shortened, normal, raised, or extended from the writing line, and limiting the luva to being singular, doubled, open, and or closed results in 32 possible combinations. This chart shows the Quenya mode. The alternate modes use similar but not always the same phonemic values for each letter. This is the primary reason that Tengwar is as adaptable as it is. In some modes, called the omotetar or vowel marking modes, the vowels are represented with diacritics called tetar. These vowel marking modes should be considered abugidas rather than true alphabets. In some vowel marking modes, the consonant signs feature an inherent vowel, making it a mixed alphabetic abugida system. These modes can vary in that the vowel diacritic can be placed either above the consonant preceding it, as in Quenya, or on the consonant following, as in Sindarin, English, and the notorious black speech inscription on the One Ring. The various modes utilize similar diacritics in differing ways. This is most apparent in the marking of vowels. Quenya's vowel markings are more numerous and varied, while the Sindarin uses a smaller number of mostly similar diacritics, but places them above or below the consonant. The Tengwar numbers are written from right to left and used across most modes. Special characters and marks are used to indicate a decimal versus a duodecimal system. The punctuation system appears to only differ slightly across modes and is found throughout multiple examples in the works of Tolkien. Now on to the aesthetics. From an aesthetic perspective, Tengwar has a unique beauty that comes from its design. Albeit simplistic, it lends itself to elegance and style that has inspired countless scripts, many that are quite derivative in both form and function. Given that Tolkien created Tengwar for what is essentially a fantasy version of Europe, and more specifically Britain, the system was devised to be written in the same fashion and for the same purposes as the Latin alphabet, with a pen, on paper, or similar surface. This lends it to the same possible artistic renderings as any other alphabet or abugida, and calligraphy especially. On screen, we see the inscription from the One Ring, written in the black speech. One of the primary issues from both functionality and aesthetic point of view is the similarity of letter design, leading many to voice concerns over neurocognitive disorders such as dyslexia. In their research, The Myths and Truths of Dyslexia in Different Writing Systems, Hoft, McCardle, and Pugh discuss theories concerning neurocognitive disorders such as dyslexia. They specifically cover the now classic orthographic depth hypothesis, which argues that in shallow orthographies such as Spanish and Finnish, spelling-sound correspondence is more direct. Phonology is generated directly from print. Hence, these languages are easier to learn. On the other hand, in deep orthographies, such as English, French, and Hebrew, phonology is derived from the internal lexicon. Because there is a complex relationship between graphemes and phonemes, the relationship is less direct, leading to greater difficulty learning to read words. On screen, you can see that the C and the E from Latin, as used in English, and the Aleph from Hebrew are good examples of this, as they have numerous variations that result from etymology and historical spellings. Tengwar, while being used for various Tolkien languages, has a narrower variation and therefore a more direct spelling-sound correspondence, leading to less potential difficulties with neurocognitive disorders such as dyslexia. Here we see that Tengwar, while being adaptable to many styles and forms, conforms very well to the medieval or classical style of manuscripts. Purportedly, this was one of Tolkien's goals with Tengwar. Here we see the Nemariae, a famous poem in Quenya, written in the Latin alphabet and Tengwar on the left. And on the right, we see another version of the Nemariae written in fountain pen. Numerous fonts and styles have been produced for Tengwar and many of its various modes. Some of these are easier to write by hand than others, but each has its qualities, and each is a reflection of the malleability of Tengwar. These different styles range from square, kufic-like versions, as seen above, and vary to the very ornate and flowy variations, and even a few sans serif font types. Many fans have even sought out tattoos and jewelry in Tengwar. The tattoo pictured says, quote, "Somewhere only we know," end quote, in the English mode for Tengwar. I would like to thank the generous and nice people listed on the screen for their input and advice. Many thanks to them all. And on screen you see Hantanye Lien, which means I give thanks to you. I appreciate you watching. In summary, I would give Tingwar a rating of 5 for functionality and 5 for aesthetics. This is the highest rating I can give a script. The script is essentially what many people, if not most people, think of when they think of an invented writing system. And for that reason, I felt it had to be the first script that I reviewed on this channel. Those are my thoughts on Tingwar, and I'm interested in hearing yours. Please feel free to like, share, and subscribe. I very much appreciate your time and thank you for watching. Next time we will be discussing Klingon, so be sure to click the bell button to be notified when the next episode is posted. As a note, all relevant links used in the making of this video are in the description. All information is the property of its creators and is openly available online.
Numerous fans of Toki Pona have made or adapted writing systems for the language of good. This episode we will be reviewing 2 major scripts used to write Toki Pona. I am helping my dad with this review. The Satellan Pona script was created by Toki Pona creator Sonia Lang, and Satellan was developed by Jonathan Gable. Lang's script was first published in Sonia Lang's book Toki Pona, The Language of Good, in 2014. The Gable script was first developed starting in 2006 and was published online circa 2012. This video addresses the writing systems of Toki Pona and does not address the linguistic criticisms of its philosophy. The Toki Pona community, by using the language, has demonstrated that it is suitable for communication, albeit simplistic and ambiguous. The commentary provided here is based on orthographical usage and is only loosely related to semantics, morphology, or syntax. The original English edition of Lang's book, Toki Pona, The Language of Good, introduces 120 hieroglyphic characters, 1 for each of the core words taught in the book. The Lang script is a logography, meaning it has a strict 1 glyph to 1 word correspondence. This means there are no separate consonants or vowels. It is most often written left to right, but can also be written top to bottom. A logogram, also logograph or lexicograph, is a written character, glyph, or symbol that represents a semantic component of a language, such as a word or morpheme. Proper names can be written using the rebus method, choosing a symbol that starts with the letter being represented and placing a cartouche around the name. For example, in the above bottom left says Ma Kanata Li Suli. Canada is large. On the right, the example says, this part of the document is written using Satellan Pona. Can you understand it? Toki Pona has a small number of words. Because of this, it's possible to make a writing system where 1 character means 1 word, but all characters look related to their meanings. On the left, we see that adjectives can be written above or inside the word it modifies. On the right, we see the first article of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights written in the Lang script, with the transliteration above it. The Gable script, once called Satellan Sui, is a logography, meaning it has a strict 1 glyph to 1 word correspondence. This means there are no separate consonants or vowels. It is most often written left to right, but can also be written top to bottom. However, the Gable script differs from the Lang script in that it includes a corresponding syllabary.
Now we'll take a look at functionality.
Both the Lang and Gable scripts use logograms, but the Lang script uses them exclusively with no accompanying syllabary. This makes the Lang script a pure logography. Rather than spoken sounds, each character represents a word, idea, or morpheme. In the Gable script, a logosyllabary is a partially phonetic and partially logographic script. Logograms, or separate syllable characters, can be used for their phonetic values to represent syllables. The Lang script has been analyzed as having radicals, that is, glyph components that align across symbols that indicate a possible semantic relationship. However, this was done after their creation, and the available information suggests that these associations were and are largely coincidental. On the right, you can see a custom physical keyboard with an ortholinear version of 17 radicals that has been used by Toki Pona speakers to type. However, the Gable syllables are actually an abugida rather than a syllabary, because consonants are modified in order to indicate an associated vowel instead of every consonant-vowel sequence having a separate and unique glyph. This does not change the fact that the Gable script can more easily write a more diverse set of words over the Lang script. In fact, with further modification, the Gable script could be used to write a multitude of languages, whereas the Lang script is decidedly limited to writing only around 120 words. Given that Tokipona only uses 2-number words and other modifiers for values higher than 2, there are no numerals in either script. Punctuation is non-standard in Tokipona and therefore is irregular in the Lang script, while the Gable script has specific glyphs or subglyphs for punctuation. Because Tokipona words change very little or not at all, a logography is ideal. Also, the very small number of words, morphemes, between 120 and 137, based on available information, lends to having a learnable number of glyphs. Logographic systems are also well suited for isolating languages, that is, languages with little to no inflection. Tokipona, much like Chinese, is an isolating language and therefore fits well with a logography.
Now we'll go over the aesthetics.
The Lang script appears to have been influenced or inspired by other already established graphical systems. Of note, Bliss Symbols, Earth Language, as well as others. The book Noble Universal Graphical Language by Milan Randich was published in 2010 and may have provided much of the inspiration for the Lang script. In fact, there are numerous examples of icon-like glyph systems that have been developed in the last century. The Lang script doesn't seem to stand out much from these. The symbols are very abstract, simple line drawings, typically consisting of no more than 5 to 7 strokes. If the idea is to impart some universal visual meaning, it fails to accomplish this, mainly as such a thing does not exist. As for the Gable script, it has a much more naturalistic feel and lends itself to more artistic renderings. Here we see that fans of the Gable script have indelibly marked their bodies with the Tokipona language, but choosing the Gable script over the Lang, as well as using it to decorate prized possessions. Doing research for this review, the only tattoo that seems prevalent among Tokipona fans using the Lang script is the character for So Wei Li, meaning animal. Also the character Kiye Te San Takalu, meaning any animal from the Prochyonidae family, seems to be a favorite among fans. This word was coined as an April Fool's joke, but has been widely embraced among fans. However, many fans of the Lang script choose to get tattoos of phrases, such as above. Kon li kama wawa mio tawa tan moli, which seems to be something like essence comes from strength. Oh, my origin is death. The Gable script is much more versatile than the Lang. However, this versatility lends itself to styles that do not always suit everyone's preferences. Additionally, the Gable script allows Tokipona fans to adapt it more readily and easily to their personal style. Some of the better examples of the Gable scripts found online could even be mistaken for a natural writing system. Much of this is due to the artistry of Gable and the types of systems researched in the development of his system, including Egyptian, early Chinese, and Mayan writing. Both are rated 4 out of 5 for functionality. The Lang script is 2 out of 5 for aesthetics due to its overly simplistic appearance and disjointed look when written in phrases. However, the Gable script is 4 out of 5 for aesthetics based on the overall artistry and beauty of the glyphs when stacked in phrases. Those are our thoughts on Tokipona scripts. I'm interested in hearing yours. Next time, we will be discussing Gallifreyan, so be sure to click the bell button to be notified when this next episode is posted.
This review will cover the High Valyrian glyphs, created by David J. Peterson in approximately 2019, as seen in the House of Dragon series on HBO. David and Jesse Peterson are absolute icons in the world of conlanging. Although David worked on Game of Thrones series before collaborating with Jesse and subsequently marrying her, they have both worked on the latest House of the Dragon series, and Jesse has long inspired many aspects of the vocabulary. More on that later. This writing system is the culmination of David advocating for the characters in the shows to have a fully functional language, complete with a complex literary tradition, i.e., writing. An interesting fact that I stumbled on while putting this video together, based on my research, Trent Pearson and David are the only two conlangers who have developed both a writing system and a language for an ongoing TV or streaming series. While researching this video, I found this chart on omniglot.com. However, David made his feelings clear on Reddit. I'll read what he wrote there. Quote, "This is how the keys A to Z are assigned in the font, but this isn't how those glyphs are read. For example, there is nothing that corresponds to C in High Valyrian. Needless to say, this was done without my permission or input. In general, Omniglot is trash when it comes to conscripts. The owner will put up literally anything. You can take the same script and submit it and call it Mordokian, and it will show up on the site within a week. It didn't start out this way, but at this point, it may as well be Wikipedia with no oversight." End quote. So, be careful what charts you see and use from omniglot.com. Now let's take a look at the functionality. Despite what Omniglot has, these are the actual consonants mapped to the IPA chart and the phones that they generally correspond to. Take note of the palatal plosive, fricative, and approximant all being represented by the same glyph. David explained to me during a brief exchange on Discord that there are no short vowels and that this is a 6-vowel system. Take note of where they're mapped here in this small vowel chart. So there are folks who compare the High Valyrian glyphs to Egyptian hieroglyphs, and a modern comparison might also be to Japanese writing, as it is explicitly a mixed system. Other folks, while wanting a writing system for High Valyrian, may not have been fully prepared for the detail David was going to put into this work. The following video by The Dragon Demands on YouTube explains it thusly.
So we knew he was capable of making up a script for this, and he finally has, and I'm really excited about that. But of course, it's complicated. Now, the thing was, it was photos of this display at the exhibition for the premiere. It mentions, well, Valyrian's kind of like their Latin. Then it goes into the basics of describing the writing system with like 3 examples. We actually saw this on a banner in one of the promo videos first, but now we're seeing this and it explains it. Well, yeah, there's a lot of parallels between, Valyria is Rome with dragons, but it's also like this super advanced older civilization, pharaonic, like Ptolemaic Egypt or something. So, because of the glyphs and everything, he went with what we'd have told him, that it's a riff on Egyptian hieroglyphs. That the structure of their writing system is comparable to Egyptian hieroglyphs, which are a needlessly complicated mix of an alphabet and ideograms. So there's symbols and alphabet stuff mixed in. But it's not a pure alphabet. That an alphabet has symbols for consonants and vowels. Earlier stuff, before the Greeks invented vowel symbols, like the Phoenicians and stuff, had what's called an abjad, which is, it's just consonants. It's like if you're texting and you disembowel something, that you take the vowels out, you can kind of tell what most words are, just in context. Generally, it's not as efficient, but it's just consonant writings. That you can't do that with a vowel, just purely vowels in contrast. That would be silly, but you can kind of get by with just writing consonant sounds. High Valyrian is what's called an abagida, I don't know how to pronounce that, I just seen it written out, which is, it's got some vowel symbols, but it's not a full alphabet. It's kind of in between that. And on the thing here it says it's actually 2 writing systems that are used within the same sentence, sometimes in the same word, just like Egyptian hieroglyphs, unfortunately. That it's a small abagida with, there's some long vowels, that there's symbols for consonants and symbols for some of the long vowels, but short vowels are just either implied or signified by diacritic marks.
A few years ago, David released a couple of images on his Tumblr. I will read through them as they pretty well explain the system, and his words are better than mine. So, in 2012, in preparation for Season 3 of Game of Thrones, I was tasked with creating the High Valyrian language. Though George R.R. Martin mentions the existence of the written form of Valyrian several times in his books, I was never given leave to create that written form. Instead, the Roman alphabet is used to render the language whenever it happens to appear on screen, until House of the Dragon. So in David's words, The Valerian writing system is a mixed script that features an alphabetic component, an iconic component, and a paradigmatic component, with all three elements often used simultaneously. I'll use the Valar Morghulis, or All Men Must Die, shown above, as an example to illustrate how it works. I'd like to note here that the alphabetic component can also be called an abjatic component. The iconic component could be referred to as logographic, and the paradigmatic could also be considered grammatical, very similar to the way Japanese kanji works. Again, in David's words, iconic glyphs often stand for whole words, though they can be augmented to form different words or different inflections of the same word. Here we see the glyph Vala, meaning man. Below it is the iconic glyph for Morgon, or death. Keep in mind that when he refers to iconic glyphs, he often means logographic. The second type of glyph, in David's words, paradigmatic glyphs, are glyphs that generally have other functions but are used in a specific verbal and nominal paradigm to indicate inflections. The first one highlighted is an iconic glyph for karo, or pile, but it's used in noun paradigms to indicate the collective number. Together with the first glyph, it reads Valar, or all men. The second glyph highlighted is an iconic glyph for jagon, to go, but it's used in verb paradigms to indicate the aorist tense, which is being used here. The third type of glyph, in David's words, are the alphabetic glyphs. They are used purely for their phonetic value. Most of the time they're used to indicate a single consonant, but sometimes they're used for long vowels or sequences of sounds. The first one highlighted is an iconic glyph for ule, meaning hook. In this word, it's used to simulate the sequence ul, which sounds very similar. The second glyph highlighted is now purely a phonetic glyph for z, though it derives from the word zixos, or neck. Here it's used for third person agreement. Altogether, it reads Morghulis, meaning must die. There are also punctuation marks in this system. The two dots are used to indicate full stops. They separate complete sentences, whether they're statements, questions, or exclamations. A single dot is used to separate words, rather than spaces. All full words are separated by single dots, as otherwise it's not always clear where one word ends and the next word begins. So in the example on screen, I've only broken down the first sentence, but as can be seen, the script, as it is, tends to focus more on logographic components, supplemented by alphabetic or abjatic and grammatical elements, lesser so. In essence, it functions similarly to Japanese from an orthographic perspective. If you'll notice, not every symbol equals just one word or just one morpheme. They can be conjugated and they can be changed either sound and or meaning. Now let's take a look at the aesthetics. The House of Dragons series has wisely chosen to incorporate David's script into the show and use it on set decorations and props. Here we see the dragon flag with the outline of the flag displaying the script. My only issue with this here is that I don't think the script is large enough to be appreciated or to even be consequential to the overall design of the flag. Probably due to a later addition of the script to the flag. There's no real way to know, but it still demonstrates that this world is lived in and it adds a layer of reality to the prop and to the show. This is supposed to be a handwritten sample from some scene in the show. Truth be told, in all honesty, I haven't really watched much of it. I spoke to David about this image, and he says that these are characters. He's not sure about a few of them, but the majority of them are, in fact, characters, and this does read to him as actual High Valyrian. It's interesting that they would create something like this and that they would do it correctly. I don't know whether or not it really looks good. I think it looks kind of junky like this, but more on that later. One of the more interesting aspects of how this script is written and how it looks is the syllable structure of High Valyrian itself, does not lend towards, or it does not necessarily indicate a preference for logographic or even abjatic elements. The six vowel system, most languages that have more than five vowels tend to indicate them pretty clearly or distinctly, uh, unless it is a straight logographic language or logographic writing system. This here, as you can see, it looks very iconic. It jumps off the screen at you, and yet it works very well for the language because he incorporated those different types of glyphs. So it makes the writing more malleable and more applicable to a inflectional language, or a language that inflects as much as High Valerian does. Here we see a prop, a book, with an inscription in the High Valerian glyphs. And because of the size of the glyphs, it's kind of hard to distinguish all of them from other types of glyphs. This is in part due to the size of the script, but also due to the serif nature or the serif heavy nature of the script. It looks good in this prop, especially with the drawing. It gives it sort of a medieval type feel to it. But again, I think the script is a little busy for this type of use. It needs to be a little more flowy to sort of go along with the image, even though it sort of fits in the overall narrative or the overall aesthetic of the show. Um, I'm not too big on serif heavy fonts, serif heavy scripts, and this kind of looks disjointed. But again, for the overall aesthetic of the show, I do believe it works. Here we see another prop from the show, a sword hilt, or at least a partial blade and the hilt of the sword. The inscription is kind of hard to make out given the secondary design on the blade that gives it sort of that metallic sort of look to it. Due to the serif heavy nature of the script, it's kind of hard to distinguish all of the glyphs, and I'm not sure exactly why they thought putting the script on this blade would make it somehow readable, or why it's important. Maybe it's an incantation or some sort of phrase that gives the sword power, who knows. But um, it just doesn't look very good here, primarily because of the secondary design on the blade, but also the serif heavy nature of the script means it's good for inscriptions, but maybe not on curved surfaces. Obviously, the sword blade is curved. As you can see here, most scripts can be carved or etched into a surface. However, angular scripts or serif heavy scripts tend to work really well, especially on the facade of a stone building. Here you see that David has highlighted what is etched into the side of this building in a still image from the show. It looks good here. Again, not being a fan of serif heavy, I don't necessarily like all of what I see in this image, but I do understand that it works well for both the aesthetic of the show as well as the overall function of the language and the script. In many of my reviews, I talk about folks who go out and get tattoos, usually fans, and those tattoos tend to lack really any significant meaning to anyone but themselves and maybe a few of the other fans. This, however, is different. This is David J. Peterson's left arm, and he has tattooed the glyph for joy. The name of the glyph is Jessie, which is significant because at the time, his fiancee and now wife, Jessie Peterson, inspired the name of the glyph and the word in the High Valerian language. As you can see here, Jessie means joyful, Jessivs or Jessivus means joy, Jessimagon means to delight. So this is not just some random fan. This is the creator of the language and the writing system who has this tattoo. Further adding to the romantic nature of David's tattoo is also this engagement ring that he gave to Jessie. And as you can see, the inside of the ring has High Valerian glyphs etched into it. I didn't decipher the phrase, but I'm assuming it's a very loving phrase, a very endearing phrase. And I think it's pretty cool that this is an actual ring given to someone that David cares greatly for, and that it has her name as part of the phrase. I think that that's pretty cool. These two High Valyrian glyphs, the one on the left being for blood and the one on the right being for fire, are very pertinent to the thematic nature of Game of Thrones and House of the Dragon. They are available on Redbubble. I spoke to David about these, and he was completely unaware that they even existed, lest you think these conlangers are out here making boatloads of money.
Kirimvose. It says with a rolled R. Kirimvose.
You're joking.
Kirimvose is the High Valyrian word for thank you.
You got Westeros. I got Kirimbose.
Kirimvose.
Okay.
Yes, good start.
Thank you. That's it. That's it.
That's it.
K-I-R-Y.
Yes. Yes.
I-M. I.
Yes.
K-R-I-M.
Yes.
V.
Yes.
O.
Yes.
S.
Yes.
E.
Yes!
Are you kidding?
You actually got that
Oh my
right.
god. Oh my god.
You're
Sorry, I don't
basically
know
fluent.
what so
I rate the High Valyrian glyphs 5 out of 5 for functionality, as it works exactly as it was designed to, and it works well. But I give it a 3 out of 5 for aesthetics. I'm not a big fan of serifs, and this script is pretty much built on them. I'd love to see how this script looks after a few years of writing it. Does it develop a form of hieratic or something similar, maybe? I do think the script fits well with the language and the aesthetics of the shows it's meant for. But as a practical script, it lacks the kind of flow that most natural systems have and develop over time. I'm sure most Game of Thrones and House of the Dragon fans will love it as it is, and that's what's really important. Those are my thoughts on the High Valyrian glyphs. I'm interested in hearing what you have to say about it. Stay tuned for the next script review and be sure to click the bell button to be notified when the next episode is posted. Hannah Beachler won an Academy Award for production design on the Marvel film Black Panther. Unfortunately, it included this script. What I have to say is completely unrelated to the writing, acting, or production value of this movie, all of which I enjoyed. But as a connoisseur of writing systems, I feel as though I should at least give my views on this one aspect of what was, in fact, a great movie. The script used for the language spoken in Black Panther films is said to be based on Nsibidi symbols. The thing is, Nsibidi is used for Igbo, not Xhosa, the real world language used in the films. Igbo and Xhosa are in the same language family, but are not mutually intelligible and geographically separated by 8,500 kilometers or almost 5,300 miles. That geography is very important. Before we get into the geography of it all, we need to recognize that Igbo already has an original syllabary called Nwagueneke, developed by a native speaker. Unfortunately, it isn't really used much anymore, but that doesn't detract from its existence. Similarly, Southern Bantu languages, such as Xhosa, have been written in something called Ditema Tsa Dinoko, infrequently, but much more fittingly than with Latin transcription, which is woefully inadequate. So, the geographic dilemma. We'll forgo the direct and indirect effects geography can and does have on an actual natural language to simply say, this is a mess. Maybe not that important of one, given that this is a comic book movie adaptation, but in the sense that all realism and linguistic accuracy has been completely thrown out the window. So, you see here the actual placement of Igbo and Xhosa. Well, this image from Iron Man puts Wakanda way up here. This one from the comic book just sort of gives us a general geographic idea of what Wakanda looks like. This map puts it similar to the movie. This one puts it in a totally different location, closer to where Igbo is spoken, in northern Nigeria or southern Niger. This one puts it near Uganda. And finally, this one puts it way up near Kenya and Ethiopia. So, what we see here is complete and total disregard for any consistency. This means that the language itself could be related to any number of other languages and could use any number of scripts, including the Arabic script, which is used widely throughout Kenya and Somalia, and perhaps even the Ge'ez script used in Ethiopia. The geography issue isn't that horrible when we take into account the apparent desire for a pan-African artistic style throughout the Black Panther movies. However, it does make using a cipher nearly inexcusable with the wide array of natural systems that were available for use. Now let's take a look at the functionality. The system used is a cipher for the Latin alphabet, identical to the one used for English, complete with upper and lower case, almost completely devoid of any sort of linguistic depth. And it also lacks creativity. This leaves the system kind of sad and almost insulting to a language with as complex a phonology as Xhosa. So along with the geographic dilemma, we also have here the Wakanda text, but it is English, i.e. it's just encoded, it's a cipher. Then we see a sample in Wakandan, or Xhosa, but as you can see again, it's just a cipher, it's just encoded. And as far as anyone can tell, Xhosa is never encoded in the Wakandan alphabet on screen. So why create an alphabet to transliterate English when they're speaking Xhosa? It just doesn't make any sense. Now let's take a look at the aesthetics. This review aims to put forth a critical view of using a Latin or English cipher instead of a native script, not to demean the work involved in making these movies. However, this mural is just English encoded. It serves no purpose to the larger desire for Pan-African theme or narrative. And of course, there's always the tattoos. The one on the left spells out THRIIM, which I guess is a name or maybe a reference to a character of some kind. I'm not sure. The center tattoo reads, quote, I am a poet, and seems to glow under black light. And the tattoo on the right is just the English word unbreakable. Again, we see fandom comes with a desire to permanently mark one's body with weird symbols that only a few people know. Anyone got any nice Hanzi tattoos? Yeah, that's kind of what I see when I look at these. And of course, there's always money to be made. Amazon has a neat fake passport that you can buy, complete with the cipher embossing. And of course, Redbubble has a nifty wall chart so you can encode any message you want to, like their sticker that reads Wakanda Forever. Etsy has a myriad of ways you can spend your money and show your support for English written with different symbols, including some fancy press-on nails. It's cases such as these that I wish people would simply say that they made something they thought looked good for the project or matched the aesthetic they were hoping for, rather than loosely tying it to something so different in so many ways. The script isn't even appealing aesthetically. It's far too blockish to fit the overall style of the film. And whoever thought it needed upper and lower case letters needs to spend a day reading about how rare those are in natural writing. Nkosi, or thank you in Xhosa. I'm giving the Wakandan cipher alphabet a 3 out of 5 for functionality because even though it is a complete cipher, it just uses Latin punctuation or English punctuation rather, and a 1 out of 5 for aesthetics because, again, it doesn't even match the language that it's supposed to be being used for. I honestly wish movie makers in general would either hire actual knowledgeable linguists or language creators, or just maybe not use a language as something central to a character or a plot. Imagine an action movie that consistently defies the laws of physics. Would you watch that? Oh, never mind. The Fast and Furious is a whole franchise. Okay, so bad example. But you get the point. People want realism. They want grounded characters that live in a textured, layered world, not just a jumble of sounds and places that might superficially resemble something they think maybe they heard about once. Those are my thoughts on the Wakandan alphabet. I'm interested in hearing what you think. Is it too simplistic? Should they have gone full force with a conlang? Stay tuned for the next script review and be sure to click the bell button to be notified when the next episode is posted. This episode will examine the Xi'an script created by Britton Watkins for the Star Citizen PC game. Britton also created the Banu language and script for the game, and that system may be covered in a future video. In full disclosure, I've never played the game, but I do know Britton well, and his work is always extremely interesting. Britton is a prolific conlanger and has worked on multiple productions, including some of his own. A link to his IMDb page is in the description of this video. Needless to say, he will likely be featured in future videos on this channel. Now we'll take a look at functionality. The basics of the Xi'an script are that it is an alphabet. Pitch marking is overtly written and easy to recognize. Spellings are internally logical and consistent. There is nothing like pair, P-E-A-R, or pair, P-A-I-R, or pair, P-A-R-E going on, with the exception that the L and R sounds are frequently swapped out for each other or conflated. It's not a big deal in the end. You will see and hear Shishwelen and Shishweren greetings for the same word, though the spelling with L is considered slightly more proper even if it is pronounced by someone as an R. Whether written vertically in the native way or horizontally, in most common in this document, the letters are in standard blocks that do not change their shapes, rotation, etc. Once you learn them, you can read them in any direction with equal ease. There are, however, 200 different letters or glyphs that you must learn to recognize. The differences between short and long vowels can be very subtle. You'll have to learn to look for them. The requirement that everything fit into a block means that when some of the diphthongs end up in the middle of the word, the smaller glyph portions of the blocks can look radically different than the larger standard forms. Most human learners struggle with this fact. There are few variations or alternate versions of the glyphs in letter form. This can end up meaning that the same sound can have two different letters, sometimes called an allograph, that represent it in certain contexts. However, the variations are not arbitrary. They follow Xi'an logic. The 2x2 grid of the Xi'an script reminds me of an older script of mine, Ngala, but Xi'an is clearly more intricate. This is obviously due to the nuanced language that it represents. But let's hear Britton explain the system in his own words.
Script. Here's a table. You can find a downloadable version on the forum, and you may want to have it printed so that you can pause this occasionally while you reference it. It looks much more daunting than SRX, but most of it is completely logical. Once you learn to recognize the individual parts, it won't seem so overwhelming. Let's start by learning how to read the syllable xian, which is the common abbreviation for Xi'an in the proper language. All syllables begin conceptually at the upper left and proceed in a left to right and then top to bottom trajectory. The onset for shan is the XY letter, pronounced for this purpose as xia, so it goes at the left. Now we need the nucleus, a. Let's first put it at the right to get to xia, but we also need the end sound in coda at the end of the syllable. So to make it fit, the ah has to be shrunken down and moved to the upper right. This gives us room to fit in a small n, named in this case an, at the lower right. But we're not done yet. Shan has a falling pitch, so a pitch marker goes beside the small ah. And it's a proper noun, a name for the Xi'an people. So they mark it as such by putting two lines side by side over the block. Now that you understand the basics of building a syllable block called an unke, let's look at all of the keshin, the individual letters. I'll pronounce them as they are highlighted in the neutral mid-level tone. A, o, u, e, i, ao, o, I, ea, wa, wo, vu. This is only used in special dialect spellings for a much later lesson. We, wow, wo, why, where, ya, yo, you, ye, yi, yao, your, yai, yeah. Pa, ka, ak, ta, sa, ha, ma, na, an, nga, ang, tha, ath, la, al, ra, al, and sometimes ar. Sla, sha, sha, cha, kla, kra. And finally, a special character, yaenuiwa, which only occurs with U diphthongs. You'll likely quickly notice that the visual difference between a short and long vowel or diphthong is simply an extra dot inserted somewhere in the letter. Short O has only 2 dots, long O has 3. The Xi'an refer to their complete alphabet as Huikexin Shan, which means Xi'an system of writing symbols. When they talk about individual letters, they simply say ke plus the sound if it's a vowel or diphthong, or the sound plus a in the case of the consonants. So ke a would mean the letter A, the letter a. Ke la would refer to this symbol. However, when they spell out of syllable block, they simply give the sounds in the order they are written. If a consonant comes in coda, it's pronounced with the a vowel first. So N in coda, as we just heard, is called an. The syllable block shan would be spelled sha-a-an, rath-u-sen, meaning xy plus a plus n in falling pitch as a name. When vowels stand alone, as in the word e, meaning choice, and e, meaning multiply, an inverted flipped L-shaped mark puts them into syllable block format. It's merely a visual element and it's not pronounced. This is also the case with most diphthongs, such as ao, meaning corporation. The bulk of the keshin on this chart are produced due to the rounded vowels with u and the palatized vowels with y. If you can learn to recognize how they look in their most compacted forms, everything is suddenly much less mysterious. U is defined most fundamentally by the shape you see here. So when it combines with O, we get wo, with no middle dot necessary in the U. The Y used in palatization is abbreviated by having its 2 lower strokes move up the sides of the upper one to form little wings, as seen here in ya and ye and yo. The letters am, an, ang, ath, al, and rarely ak, look somewhat different from their full-size versions that can appear either on the left or the right of a block. Learning this is just a process of memorization and practice. Studying by using the syllables mam, nan, ngang, thath, lal, and kak can be helpful. Remember that sometimes speakers will pronounce ral and lal as rar and lar, replacing L with an R sound. When a vowel or diphthong appears in the upper right-hand corner of a block, it is technically called ping, meaning small. Hence a-ping, o-ping, u-ping, e-ping, etc. The most difficult letters to recognize are the highly compressed, rounded, and palatalized ping versions of diphthongs like y and yoa. If you look closely, you can find all of the strokes of all of the parts in the forms. Sometimes 2 dots end up on top of each other so that one cancels out the other. And in this case, you just see one of them. But all of the forms are unique when compared to each other. You will simply have to memorize them. There's no way around it. And speaking of memorization, one of the best ways to do that is through writing the letters by hand. Finally, let's look at how pitch is marked on syllable blocks. We'll use our syllable loa as an example. Mid-level flat syllables have no marking at all. Loa. Low-pitched syllables have a single underdot within or below the block. Loa. U. The higher versus lower dot is just an aesthetic typesetting difference. Falling pitch blocks have a tick mark at the upper right. Loa. Rising pitch blocks have a tick mark at the lower left and a single dot at the upper right. Loa. High-pitched syllables are marked with double dots at the upper right. Loa. And finally, across syllables and words, there is a scenario that the pitch rises only to fall again on the next syllable. This happens in athlekol, for example. Do you recall that athlekol is the farewell greeting? In this case, 2 ticks on the center syllable, one at the lower left and another at the upper right on the same block, show the rise to fall pattern. It's important to understand that pitch in Xi'an is not pure tone. You'll do better to think of it as the direction in which your voice is moving up or down or not. The flow is generally across multiple sounds or syllables, as in athlekol. Falling pitch is especially rare on short syllables, but it does occur even in xian, as we've already seen, and on kya, which means fight or battle. Keep in mind also that the Xi'an script on Xi'an worlds is written almost exclusively vertically from the upper right to the lower left. When practicing long words and sentences, keep this in mind and try to write it that way yourself. A single space separates words. You can find some examples of numerals and punctuation on the downloadable document. That's it for this lesson. In the next chapter, we'll be exploring lots of basic words and phrases, and if you want to learn to read well, practice all of this over and over before moving on. Yan leekol, study well.
Now we'll go over the aesthetics. The immediate and obvious comparison here is with Hangul, but it also gives a Tangut-like vibe as well. The language even has a very particular Southeast Asian feel to it. Clearly, there was a specific aesthetic goal, and I'm inclined to say that it was very much achieved. It does have quite a bit going on, but the cluttered look is understandable for 2 reasons. 1, it is for an alien language, and 2, each glyph block is conveying significant phonological information. Chris Harrow is another Xi'an creator, but his primary contribution was the font, which is used in the dictionary he created and hosts online. This type of fan devotion shows exactly how impactful a well-developed language and script can be. A link to his pages are in the description of this video. Chris is also taken to creating calligraphy that evokes an East Asian flair while still holding true to the function and design of the script made by Britain. It's impressive and notable, especially when we keep in mind that this script was developed for a game. This color wheel appears in the document An Overview of the Xi'an Language for Diplomats, linked in the description of this video. It demonstrates that a developed conlang and script can add nuance and depth to a piece of media, be it in a show or, in this case, a video game. Britton, in his capacity as the script developer, added a cursive version of the script. This sample is searchable online and is indicative of the artistry possible when a script is given the attention it deserves. It's difficult to argue that this sample couldn't pass for a natural writing system, and I would guess that there are folks who have probably mistaken it for one. Again, a few of the blocks are quite busy, but in some ways this only adds to the naturalistic vibe that the script gives off. A YouTuber by the handle Jail or Jale has created various fonts for the Xi'an system that further the usefulness of the script for the world of Star Citizen and for the fandom. He has multiple videos explaining these fonts, and I recommend to anyone that's interested to go check those out. A link to his channel is in the description of this video. Here we can see a letter for letter or glyph for glyph comparison of the fonts between what Jail calls the classical and what he calls the modern. They're both very well done, though I prefer the classical. I do think the modern fits well with the sci-fi futuristic nature, though, of the Star Citizen game. Ultimately, this script and the language adds to the unique world building of the video game and gives users an immersive experience. The design, being as well done as it is, creates a naturalistic feel that fans obviously admire and often expect. There is little doubt of Britton's talent and dedication. So, I believe the word is pronounced choa or choa. Thank you for watching. I am rating the Xi'an script 5 out of 5 for functionality and 4 out of 5 for aesthetics. The script is designed perfectly for the language it is used for and complements the morphophonology and phonotactics in a way that should be aspired to. I've known Britton for about a decade, and I can say without hesitation that his work is always of the highest quality, and this Xi'an script is clearly no exception. Anyway, those are my thoughts on Xi'an, and I'm interested in hearing what you think. Have you ever played the game? Have you ever seen this script before watching this review? Next time, we'll be discussing whether Shavian or Deseret is worse. so be sure to click the bell button and be notified when the next episode is posted. Please be sure to like, share, and subscribe. I very much appreciate your time and thank you for watching. As a note, all relevant links used in the making of this video are in the description. All information is the property of its creators and is openly available online.